Okay, I'm going to try to do this without knocking any of these figures over because they do not have pegs in the feet that I can maneuver very easily. I could have drilled those out, but just haven't had time to do that yet. I usually don't showcase a lot of my own painting because I don't love it. Sometimes with bigger vehicles I do, but with figures, sometimes it's just, I'm not quite there yet on some details, but it's gotten good enough to where I can tolerate my own painting and say, hey, that's good enough for now. Someday I'll come back and perfect it. But the reason I wanted to highlight and showcase these figures is because one, they're awesome. Two, there are more of them coming. And three, it just kind of brings back some fun memories about where comics were back in the late 80s. So mid to late 80s. So these are from Superpowered Customs on Etsy. And a lot of us know Brian Driscoll and his work. Brian, it's like I always say, I've learned to paint off of Brian's stuff. And I love what Brian has done over the last year or so. He just keeps getting better and better and better. And a lot of us saw that the Tower of Darkness just got released and is an awesome, awesome addition to your Superpowers line. But these figures are figures I never thought I'd be able to get. So, you know, you can see starting on the left, we have the camo suit Aquaman from the mid-80s Aquaman series. That's the Neil Posner design, rumored to be retired because it was too difficult for anyone to draw, but it was such a cool change at the time. And if you remember and kind of harken back to that period of time, for those of us who are old enough, that sort of big modern era change that was taking place in the mid-80s in comics. You had Crisis, you know, gave way to Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, Man of Steel. You had reinventions of a lot of comic characters. You also had comics growing up with comics like Mouse and Watchmen. And what that started to tell us was things were changing. We're going to start to see our favorite heroes in new costumes and with new challenges. And so it was very cool to see an Aquaman figure like this. And several months ago, part of this, and I had asked Brian for a camo version of Aquaman, which of course he'd already thought of and was working on that. And, you know, we kind of got into a discussion about these sorts of figures and what would look good for some alternate Justice League versions. And the Fire Elemental of Firestorm, which is on the other side here, was also mentioned. And we talked about the Hawks from Hawkworld. And, you know, he's got a few other figures up there right now. There is the 70s version of Zatanna. There is the Bloodwind version of Martian Manhunter. There is the Electric Superman. And I plan on getting those very soon. He also is creating all the other Justice Leaguers as well. Those will be coming out soon in alternate costumes. So think of some of your favorite alternate costumes from like the 80s and the 90s that you might be able to get. And these were sort of dreams come true for me, and as a Superpowers fan, to be able to have them in my collection. So Aquaman, you know, again, beautiful design and detail. He actually copied this, or he copied, it's the wrong way to say it, but he clearly scanned the Aquaman sculpt from Superpowers and made almost an exact representation. My painting is not great. If you look at his eyes really close, you'll see I've got to come back and work on those. But the detail is spot on. Gave us just the great details here with the white, the light blue, the dark blue, the black. It was fun to paint. And that's probably the other takeaway I want to leave you with. The other thing about these is not only do I love them, but they're fun to paint. I had a lot of fun painting these. And, you know, again, kind of making them the figures that I wanted. And it was easy. And, you know, I've built up kind of a collection of paints over time. It was pretty easy to find some of the right paints to get this done and make it look as cool as it can look for me at this period in time. Let's take a look at Hawkman and Hawkwoman. So, you know, this is a little bit shorter version of Hawkman. And if you look at the revised Who's Who guide, which I think came out in 91 or sometime in that era, Carter Hall is supposed to be about 6 feet instead of 6'6", which he was in the earlier versions of, with his earlier versions of Who's Who, it was 6'6", I believe. And of course that 6'6" fit with the original Superpowers figure, but this has been scaled down. But there's so many cool details on this. I hope they're not lost on you. The wings jump out, of course, and I'm going to show you the back, how these are held on. They're held on by tiny pegs. You have to be a little bit careful with them, and I could push these in a little bit tighter. I could probably work on them a hair just to make them sit in there a bit more, but they're very nicely sculpted. wings, very nicely sculpted, that fit in very nicely with this figure. You know, I use a lot of Citadel paints, and they have a version of yellow that works very nicely for the look that the Hawks transitioned to coming out of the Hawkworld series. I wasn't as big a fan of the Hawkworld series. It became a bit dark. Hawkman ends up, you know, Carter Hall ends up killing someone. Qatar Hall ends up killing someone, and you know that creates impetus for him to change. But didn't really love that about the character. Tried to mirror as much of the comic look as I possibly could. You'll see my Hawk logo is kind of ugly on the chest. I could come back and work on that a bit, but overall, a really great figure. And again, you know, just unbelievable. We're finally able to get these. So same thing with Hawkwoman. I believe she was still Hawkwoman in the comics at this point, before reverting back to Hawkgirl. And, you know, again, has the awesome red hair, similar wings, and a great pairing with the Hawkman figure. And I did a little bit better job on the Hawk logo here. So you can see the wings kind of pop out every so often, but no big deal. Just pop them back in. And then finally, the Fire Elemental Firestorm. I had a lot of fun with this figure. And this was sort of the version that I believe Professor Stein became in the end. Ronald and I forgot who the Russian character was. I remember if they inhabited this character for a brief period of time, or if it was just Martin Stein, Professor Stein. But this is the Fire Elemental version. I always thought this was a cool looking version of Firestorm. That, you know, again, you saw a lot of reinvention in the mid to late 80s, and in this, I believe, 1989 change, we start to see a more mature looking version of Firestorm. Just love, you know, love the crazy head or flame head here coming out. I probably made it a bit more red than it appears in the comics, and could have done a slightly different paint job, but I just kind of liked the effect overall of the red. You know, he's also a great addition to the "this is fine" memes, or "this is fine, this is okay," because of just the amount of flame coming out of his head and arms. But love the overall look. You know, not sure why he didn't put, I think there were flames as well that were on the feet. He didn't put those on there, but not a big deal at all. Love this figure. And again, you can see some of my imperfections on here. I could have done a little bit better job. The back is particularly bad, but love that we're finally able to get this figure, and fits in great on missions with my other Superpowers team members. So, you know, if you can, go to his shop, go to the Superpowered Customs shop on Etsy, and get yourself these figures. You will not be disappointed. These are just, you know, if you grew up in the same era that I did, and we loved Superpowers, and then we always started to dream about the figures we could get, we can get these from Superpowered Customs. And so anyway, love the work that he's done, appreciate everything that I'm able to see and from that group, and I'm excited to get more in the very near future. So leave your comments below and subscribe to the channel. Thanks, bye.